All right, let's begin. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. We're looking at the fourth ray. Now this gets a little technical. It's described as the precious fourth ray of the 31st letter's 31st flash, which is spiritually and by rank the fifth ray, and an important nuance of the verse of Hasbiye. That's a mouthful, right? For those who don't know the whole collection, let me break it down. There are four main books: the words, the letters, the flashes, and the rays. So the piece we're reading today is the fourth ray from the book of the rays. But the author makes a specific point here. He says that spiritually and by rank, it's like the fifth flash. But in terms of its form and position, it's the fourth ray from the 31st letter and the 31st flash. He's talking about rank and position. Let's think about that. In the military, for example, is captain a rank or a position? It's a rank. But regimental commander, that's a position, right? Or take a teacher. That's their rank. But when they become a principal, that's a position, the principal's office. A position is the place you occupy, while rank is the level you've reached in your profession, your degree. So he's saying that in terms of its content and the value of its truth, the fourth ray belongs in the flashes, the third book. But in terms of its placement in the sequence of topics, it has to be here, in the fourth ray. For example, the third ray proves the truths of faith, God's power and mercy. And the fourth ray follows up with the concept of Hasbunallah. God is sufficient for us. So it's the logical next step. It fits here. The topic belongs right after the proof of God's power and mercy. It's like this with the four big books. The words is the first level. Then at the end of the words, the 30th word transitions into the letters, breaking into 33 letters. That's a step down in structure. Then the 33rd letter breaks into 33 flashes, another step down. For instance, when you're reading the 17th flash, and it has 5 points inside it, each point is another level down. So the letters, the flashes, the rays, what he's saying is this text has the value of the flashes, but its topic and placement belong in the rays. And this tells us something important. The arrangement of these texts isn't random. Just like a person's eye and ear, each have their own wisdom and reason for being where they are. The topics in these treatises have profound reasons for their placement. Nothing is arbitrary, you see? We can understand that from this explanation. So again, spiritually and by rank, the fifth flash, and in form and position, the precious fourth ray of the 31st letter's 31st flash, and an important nuance of the verse of Hasbiye. Notice it says, the precious fourth ray. It's telling us how valuable this is. And why? Because it's going to explain the verse, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. What does that mean? God is sufficient for us. It means when you have God, you don't need anything else. God alone is enough. Think about it. In this world, people chase after things to find satisfaction, but they always end up feeling empty. A man says, if I just earned this much money, I'd be happy. He gets rich, but he's still not happy. If I just reach that position, then I'll be happy. He gets there, still not happy. If I just had a gold coin, still not enough. Nothing can fill that void in the heart or answer our soul's infinite, eternal needs. You could become the king of the world, have everything perfect, but then you look at your life and see you only have 15, maybe 20 years left. And it's still not enough. Nothing can truly satisfy a human being. That's why this meaning is so precious. And because this text explains it, it's called the precious fourth ray. Then it says it's an important nuance of the verse of Hasbiye. There's a beautiful meaning in this phrasing too. If he had said, I am going to explain the reality of this verse, he would be limiting it. He'd be implying, this is all it means. But by saying it's just one important nuance, he's showing respect for the Quran. He's saying, this verse is a treasure chest full of countless jewels. I'm just going to show you one of them. This preserves our reverence for the Quran. You see, some people explain a verse and say, this is what it means. But come on, the Quran is the eternal word of the eternal God. Do you really think its meaning is limited to what you, one person, can grasp? The Quran speaks to all people in all ages. You're just catching a glimpse. It's like holding a small mirror up to the sun. Can you say the light in your mirror is the entirety of the sun's light? Of course not. The sun's light is endless. All you can say is, this is the meaning that shone upon my mirror, my heart, my soul. That way, you remain respectful while still sharing a truth. And just as the author says this about the Quran, we should have the same attitude toward the RİSALE-İ Nur. Think of the fourth ray as a sun, a reflection from the sun of the Quran. What we understand from it tonight, in this 1 hour, is just the light that opens up to us right now. If we were to say, okay, the fourth ray means this, we'd be wrong. If we read it tomorrow, we'll gain something new. If we read it next week, we'll gain something new again. So if we were to say that the entire meaning is only what we understood at this moment, we could never read it again, and we'd miss out on all the other meanings. Just as our teacher constantly read the Quran and received new inspiration each time, we should approach the RİSALE-İ Nur the same way. We reread it over and over because we believe we will benefit from it each time. Otherwise, there would be no point in rereading, right? For example, our brother Ahmet, you know the first word. If you said, okay, I know the first word, I understand it, would that be right? No. You should say, I've understood one of the hundreds of meanings in the first word. I'll read it again to understand another, and again for another. That process has to continue. A warning. Unlike other books, the RİSALE-İ Nur is veiled at the beginning and unfolds gradually. Especially in this treatise, the first level, while being a very precious truth, is also very subtle and deep. Yes, these are subtle meanings. It reminds me of a sentence from the 10th word, which says something like, be content with the amount you understand. When we read a part of the RİSALE-İ Nur, we should be happy with whatever we grasped, whether it's a little or a lot, and then we should strive to increase that understanding by studying it again and again. So the RİSALE-İ Nur might seem closed off at first, but as you read it over and over, it opens up. There's a line from the court defenses about this. It says, the dowry of a coy, graceful beauty is attention. If a meaning is being coy with you, if it isn't revealing itself, you have to pay its price. What's the price? Attention. When you read with more attention, that meaning lets go of its coyness and reveals itself. The text is veiled at the beginning and unfolds gradually. For instance, in the first level it says, God is sufficient for us. Why? Because he possesses absolute perfection. It just states that. But what is absolute perfection? It explains that in the 6th level, not here. So it mentions a concept, but unpacks it in later pages. That's another way we can think of it, unfolding gradually. Were you looking for it? It's not there because you need the book The Rays. He was looking in the short words. Of course, I can't find something that isn't there either. Brother, tell him the page number from The Rays. Especially in this treatise, the first level, while being a very precious truth, is also very subtle and deep. Yes, this, Orhan, it feels a bit stuffy in here to me. How does it feel to you? Like there's no oxygen. Let's open a window somewhere. You see, human beings have an innate inclination towards existence, towards perfection, towards beauty, in its broadest sense. This is embedded in our spirit. This truth affects all of our actions. But the only existence that can satisfy this inclination is the existence of God, who is in a state of infinite perfection. Because this first level explains these things, it gets a bit deep. It speaks to the deepest feelings of a person. That's why he calls it deep, to draw our attention to its value. Subtle and deep means you have to pay a little more attention. Think about it a bit more. Moreover, this first level emerged for me as a cure for my varied and deep sorrows, in the form of a highly significant personal reasoning of my feelings, a very spiritual transaction of faith, and a very secret dialogue of the heart. Yea, a cure for my varied and deep sorrows. I think all the thousands of psychological ailments, that person didn't value me, I lost this, I'm getting old, and so on, all of these human sorrows are rooted in the truths discussed here. The soul is meant to find contentment in the existence of God, but when it can't find that ultimate truth, it seeks it in worldly things and fails. Not being able to attain something is one kind of pain. Attaining it and not being satisfied is another. Attaining it and then losing it is yet another kind of pain. It's pain all around. So these sorrows can only be resolved by finding God through the verse, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. That's why he says it appeared as a cure for my varied and deep sorrows. Is this really true? Let's think about the author's life. What did he have? Prison, right? 28 years in Afyon prison, Denizli prison, Eskişehir prison. There was hunger, poisonings. What else? Exile from his homeland, oppression, pressure. He had every kind of hardship. He had none of the things a normal person has today. But does he ever express a personal sorrow related to people or the world? He doesn't. They poison him, they degrade him, yet there's no complaint. Why? Because these truths of faith have solved the core issue for him, so he sees the rest as temporary. If it's hardship, he says it becomes a reward. It helps the service to flourish. He finds a truth in everything and finds consolation. But fundamentally, he has a solid, deep structure. He's tried with the death penalty. It doesn't faze him. They throw him in jail. It doesn't faze him, right? He never wavers from his path. So what can this do for us? It means that if we could fully grasp these truths, we would solve our main problem. The remaining things would then be resolved easily, I think. So this emerged as a highly significant personal reasoning of my feelings, a very spiritual transaction of faith, and a very secret dialogue of the heart. Look at those three phrases. A personal reasoning of my feelings. Does anyone these days really analyze their own feelings? I have these emotions, they want this, but it's not happening. To look at it from that perspective, a reasoning of feelings, then a transaction of faith. He deals with these feelings, using the light and meaning coming from his faith. Finally, a secret dialogue of the heart. One who is in complete accord with me can feel it completely. How can we be in accord with the author on this, Amit? Maybe if we were to reflect on ourselves in the same way. We have sorrows, we have pains. What is their real source? There's an apparent reason, right? This happened, that happened. But underneath, there are these fundamental truths hidden in our human nature. When you get down to that level, you find the real cause, don't you? Let's say you bought a beautiful vase and it broke. You're sad. Why? Because it broke. But you're not really sad because it broke. The truth is you have deep feelings inside you, and the event disturbed them. It's about your own nature. You gave your heart's affection to that vase, so when the vase broke, you became sad. But if you had given that feeling to God, who is eternal and everlasting, the breaking of the vase wouldn't have affected you so much. So, being in accord means feeling a similar need for these truths. If there's a similarity in feeling our need for the truths of faith, for God Almighty, then He says you can fully benefit, you can fully feel it. Otherwise, you can't truly savor it. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Once the people of the world had isolated me from everything, and I had fallen into 5 different kinds of exile. Does anyone know the word exile or gerbet? Is anyone here in exile? What was your name? Burak. Burak, are you in exile? No? No one here is in exile. I'm not, for example. What about you? Gaziantep is just a stone's throw away. Well, maybe it counts. For me, Afyon is 650 kilometers away. Ahmed is in exile, 1,000 kilometers away. Exile shakes you, doesn't it? Why does it shake you, Risat? Your loved ones. Because in exile, you're separated, right? You're away from the people you love, the places you're used to, the things that make your heart happy. So what does this do to the heart? It shatters it. The author found himself in 5 kinds of exile, not just from his homeland, but 5 separate types of exile. At first, exile is a bad thing. It's something people dislike. But if you can turn that exile, that separation, into closeness with God, then it becomes a benefit for you. That's why the hadith says, glad tidings to the strangers. They are actually at an advantage compared to others. Normally the heart is drawn to things it loves. That's the first step. The second step is to give that love to God. Those in exile have already, willingly or not, lost the first step. So they are 1 step ahead. It's an advantage. Unless they turn to dissipation, then it becomes a disadvantage. But if they use it as a means to find the truth, it's a huge plus for them. Once, the people of the world had isolated me from everything. I'm mentioning these things so that if anyone feels isolated, they shouldn't be sad. Look at the author. They put him in prison. That's one isolation, right? Even when he was out, they put him in a house and stationed a police guard on his street so people couldn't visit him. That's the first isolation. They put him in prison, a second isolation. In prison, he might think, at least I'm with my brothers. But no, they put him in a separate cell, forbidden to see anyone, and they poison him. They try to isolate him from life itself. They put him in 4 different kinds of isolation. How can anyone endure that? It's so difficult. And in my old age, let me ask you this, Risat. The fact that the author lived this life, from our perspective, in terms of its effect on us, what if he had lived with incredible means, in all kinds of comfortable situations, materially and spiritually? Would his influence on us be better, or is it more powerful because he lived in these conditions? What do you think, Orhan? I think it's more powerful this way. In the other scenario, you'd look at him, happy and content, and wonder, is he happy because of his circumstances or because of his faith? You couldn't tell from a distance. But when he is in prison with nothing and still radiates happiness to those around him, you say, there's no other possibility. There is nothing in his environment to make him happy. The whole world has abandoned him. Despite that, he stands tall. Then you realize that these lessons have truly been a cure for him. And you think, then they can be a cure for me too. Exactly. In the most impossible circumstances, he wrote works that address the entire world. Everyone who reads them feels fortunate to have found them. They feel this joy. There are people who declare the day they found these works as their new birthday. You ask, well, how old are you? And they say, 2. You say, but you're a grown man. And he replies, I met these works 2 years ago. That's when I started to understand life. So I consider myself born on that day. To write such a work in those conditions, in that state of deprivation, you automatically say, these books are truly a means to happiness. So you think, I must read them and benefit. Of course, it was difficult for the author. But let me ask you, as a man of literature, if you were to write a book, would you rather write it in a prison or in a library? Exactly. It's hard, and yet people want to escape that hardship. They say, one who does not burn cannot ignite others. And in my old age, I was afflicted with 5 kinds of sickness, partly brought on by sorrow. So he's isolated from everyone, and on top of that, he has 5 different illnesses. We know he had one called kulunch, a severe muscle stiffness. The muscles become like wood. You'd think they were bone. I don't know the details, but his back muscles would get hard as rock. There's a practice of breaking these knots. One of his students was tasked with doing this for him, massaging the muscles to loosen them. Once he pressed too hard and the author said, Goat, what are you doing? Go a bit easier. So that's one illness. He had 5 of them, always with him. He said about them, they are my guests until I die. Welcome, Abdul Hamid. He would say, this illness is my guest. A guest stays for a day, 2 days, maybe 3, and then leaves, right? But he said, these are my guests until the grave. If we were to spend just one night in the prison conditions the author lived in, we'd probably perish. We wouldn't make it to the 2nd day. The cold in Afyon is famous. It's not as bad now, but it used to be worse. Last year it was -15 when I went. In the author's cell, they broke the window and the stove wasn't lit. The blanket they gave him was so full of holes you could see through it when you held it up. He slept on a wooden plank, not a bed. They wanted him to die. They would give him soup, and the soup would freeze. You couldn't drink it. He survived in those conditions. God protected him. On top of that, they poisoned him. Once they put poison in his food. He was a bit late to eat, and a mouse ate it instead. The mouse died on the spot. Knowing these things is useful, Abdul Hamid. It shows us this was no ordinary man. No one makes such sacrifices for others for God's sake. They made him offers. They said, give up this cause, and we'll give you every kind of opportunity. Why are you struggling? He refused. They offered him a salary of 300 liras a month. 300 liras back then was a fortune. Each lira was maybe worth a gold coin. Imagine 300 gold coins a month today. They offered him a fully furnished house. They offered him the position of general preacher for the eastern provinces. Just come under our command, they said. He replied, no, I won't accept. Shouldn't we read the book of a man like that? And when he passed away, all his belongings didn't even fill half a basket. Half the basket was empty. That's all he owned when he died. But because he found Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil, amidst all those difficulties, because he found God and found the remedy for that boundless void, these truths came to him. In a moment of heedlessness, brought on by my distress, instead of turning to the comforting and rescuing lights of the RİSALE-İ Nur, I looked directly into my own heart and I searched my soul. A heedlessness brought on by distress. Look at that. Every word has meaning. Where does heedlessness come from? From distress. When does a person feel distress? When they're under pressure, when things go wrong, you get distressed. Your car tire goes flat, you're distressed. That's a simple thing. But in that moment of distress, heedlessness takes over, and you forget the real truths? Normally, one should always think of God and the hereafter, but when something happens, you forget everything. A person can even forget their prayers. You become focused on the problem, and because it captures all your attention, you forget the realities. It causes a state of heedlessness. The reverse is also true. Forgetting God can cause distress, but I think the distress here refers to worldly troubles. Instead of turning to the comforting and rescuing lights of the RİSALE-İ Nur, whenever we feel distressed, if we just open our book and turn towards the truth, we immediately find relief, don't we? A meaning comes and comforts us. But he says, this time I didn't do that. What did I do? I looked directly into my heart. I searched my soul. I said, let me see. Is it my heart that's aching or my soul? Let me investigate. He decided to diagnose the problem. The author is a doctor. A patient can't perform a diagnosis. We are the patients. We can only take the medicine, right? We just swallow the pill. But the author, knowing the illness and the cure, is preparing to prescribe the right medicine. I looked directly into my own heart and I searched my soul. I saw that a very powerful love of eternity, a vehement love of existence, a great yearning for life, along with boundless impotence and infinite poverty, were dominant in me. A powerful love of eternity, Aşk-ı Beka. What did we say about that last time? Beka means permanence, continuity. Humans are in love with permanence. We don't fall in love with things that will end or disappear. This is a beautiful house, but if it's only going to last for 2 days, you don't fall in love with it. But you want it to be lasting. The heart loves beautiful things and desires their permanence. We are seekers of eternity. Why do we come here, read books, try to strengthen our faith, and perform our worship? What's behind it all? Eternity. What is paradise? It is eternal permanence, and we are seekers of that eternity. The path to eternity is through faith and righteous deeds. So I need to succeed in faith and good deeds. I need to read my book, study together, and attain a perfect faith. It all comes back to that love of eternity. Then, a vehement love of existence, muhabbeti vücut. A person wants to possess existence. Today, what does that mean? A house. You want to buy a house? That's a form of existence. You want to buy land? That's existence. You want to earn money? Money is a form of existence. There's this attachment to existence because we ourselves are helpless, in a state of non-existence, and we want to hold on to existence. But if the existence you hold on to is fragile and destined to disappear, it's meaningless. You need to hold on to something solid. Whatever you hold on to in this world, since its foundation is transient, it can't satisfy that love of existence. The real object of this love is the existence of God. These feelings were placed in our soul by God. When the soul directs them towards God, it's doing the right thing. But when it directs them towards the world for satisfaction, I'm not talking about needing a house. I'm talking about the satisfaction of the feeling. That satisfaction can only be found by turning to God. Then, a great yearning for life. What are the signs of life? If someone is talking, seeing, hearing, smelling, if their heart is beating, they're alive. Humans yearn for life, to see more, hear more. There's this intense desire for life. You don't say, I'll go find a well, jump in, and never come out. Some saints secluded themselves in caves. Did they turn away from life? No, they turned away from material life to get closer to the spiritual realm. They were actually seeking a greater life. They saw that this world has its limits, so they decided not to get too distracted by it. They directed their yearning for life towards the spiritual realms, towards God. They were on another level than us. and boundless impotence and infinite poverty were dominant in me. 3 desires were listed, and now 2 realities, impotence and poverty. So you have 3 demands and 2 realities that say you can't have them. You want to live forever. Go ahead, live. How are you going to do it? You want boundless existence. Go on, possess it. But you have infinite poverty. Your aspirations are endless, but your reach is short. What happens then? A conflict, a collision. It's like wanting something desperately but having no money. You're caught between 2 opposites. However, a terrible annihilation was extinguishing that love of eternity. Death comes. They say to the angel of death, "You came without any warning." And he replies, "I was always sending you warnings. You had 2 working ears, then one went deaf. Your eyes grew dim. Didn't you understand?" He comes with warnings, not all at once. After age 35, you start the descent. The blessings you were given start to be taken away, little by little, until everything is taken at once, and you're gone. So this terrible annihilation extinguishes the love of eternity, except for those with perfect faith. They have come to love death. But for those in heedlessness, when death comes, no one says, "Oh, I was waiting for you, let's go." It extinguishes that love for permanence in their soul. But if a person has found a path to the eternal realm, then death cannot extinguish that love. For a believer, death is not an end. It is the beginning of real life. It is the end of transient life, but the start of eternal life. In that state, I said what a grief-stricken poet once said. A grief-stricken or burnt poet. When does the heart burn? When it encounters loss, nothingness, separation. That's when it burns, shatters. My heart desires eternity, but my earthly form begs for decay. I've fallen into a sickness with no cure. Alas, even the great physician Luqman is unaware of it. My heart wants eternity. I remember in the 10th word, the author asks his imagination as a child, "Would you prefer 1,000,000 years of life with the sultanate of the world, but with nothingness at the end? Or would you prefer an ordinary, difficult, but eternal life?" He says his imagination recoiled from the first and said, "I want permanence, even if it's in hell." That's how strong the desire for eternity is. People are searching for immortality, aren't they? This has been the strongest desire since the time of Adam. But has anyone found it? So many people have come and gone. The wealthiest families in the world are getting chips implanted, replacing parts. One man hoped to live to 120. He had all the resources. His kidney failed, he got a new one. His heart failed, he replaced it. I think he died at 103 or 104. The chips didn't help. There is no cure for death. God created the door this way. There's an expiration date. Not even the famous physician Luqman, who was given the cure for every illness, could do anything about death. So, if we know that sooner or later the angel of death will come and say, "Let's go," and there's no doubt about that, what should we do? We should see the time we have as a treasure. This remaining life of ours is precious. It won't come again. It's decreasing bit by bit, but it's incredibly valuable. You wouldn't throw your money away, would you? You want a return on your investment. We must invest this precious time in things that will give us a return in the eternal life. That's the only consolation. Otherwise, life ends, and you say, "Well, we got old, but we saw the world." What's the point of that? What did you gain? But if you learn one truth about God's nature, that might appear as 100 palaces for you in the hereafter. It has an eternal return. I bowed my head in despair. Suddenly the verse, "Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil," God is sufficient for us, and he is the best disposer of affairs, came to my aid. It said, "Read me with attention." I bowed my head in despair. Mayusain, what does that mean, Burak? It's like you're hoping for something, for money to come from somewhere. Then you see it's not coming. You feel hopeless. I'm not going to get it. That's despair. You desire eternity, but you have no means to attain it. There's no cure. So I bowed my head in despair. But then the verse came to my aid. Hasbunallah. God is sufficient for us. What does sufficient mean? It means when He is there, nothing else is needed. The cure for your desire for eternity is with God. His existence is enough, more than enough, because God is an eternal being. He is everlasting. Just as He gave your mirror, the light of life in this world, He can give it for all of eternity. He can solve your problem. If He is there, everything is there. Read me with attention. He's saying, understand who God is. Understand that He has names that address your needs. See the meanings within me. I began to read it 500 times a day. This is a sign for us. To grasp the reality of something, you need repetition. Repetition is beautiful, even if it's 180 times. There's no problem with repetition. It's not just repeating, it's establishing. You wipe a table once, it gets clean. You wipe it again, it gets cleaner. Each repetition cleanses more, or like a painter. The first coat, then another. With each coat, it comes to life, right? The great scholar Ibn Hajar was a student who couldn't learn anything. After years of trying, he gave up. On his way home, he saw water dripping from a spring onto a rock, and the constant dripping had worn a hole in the stone. He thought, my head can't be harder than this rock. I will pound this knowledge into my head with repetition. He went back to the madrasa and became the great scholar Ibn Hajar, the son of the stone. The secret is in repetition. Look, a man like the author repeated it 500 times. After that, God opened the doors of the verse's meaning, and lights of meaning began to flow. I wrote down in summary only a part of the very precious lights that unfolded for me with the certainty of sight, 9 of its lights or levels, and I referred the detailed explanations, which I previously knew with the certainty of knowledge, to the RİSALE-İ Nur. What I understand from this is that there are many meanings related to this verse scattered throughout the collection, which he wrote before with the certainty of knowledge. But here he has gathered them together with the certainty of sight, as if seeing the truths directly. He's telling us, read this part to get the direct experiential lesson. Then, to expand on it, read the related parts throughout the collection. Then you'll have both the certainty of knowledge and the certainty of sight. The first level of the light of Hasbiye. The love of eternity within me is not directed toward my own permanence. Rather, because my nature contains a shadow of a manifestation of one of the names of the owner of absolute perfection, who is loved without cause and for his own sake, the innate love in my disposition, which is directed toward the existence, perfection, and eternity of that absolutely perfect one, had, due to heedlessness, lost its way, clung to the shadow, and fallen in love with the permanence of the mirror. Let's break it down. The love of eternity within me. When he looked into his heart, he found this intense desire for permanence. This desire was placed in us not for ourselves, but to be directed towards God's essence, the owner of absolute perfection, who is loved without cause and for his own sake. What does this mean? Why do you love a peach? Because it tastes good. Why do you like that taste? There's no reason. You just do. We love perfection. Why? We just do. It's innate. God placed this feeling in our nature. So our love for perfection automatically turns towards God because He is infinitely perfect. You were created to love God, to be in love with His permanence and perfection, because there is no other being that is both eternal and absolutely perfect. God put this love in you for Himself. But what do? Out of heedlessness, you forget God and use that love for yourself. You start loving yourself. This is a mistake that needs to be corrected, so that innate love, which is meant to be directed at God's existence, perfection, and permanence, has, due to heedlessness, lost its way. It got confused, clung to the shadow, and fallen in love with the permanence of the mirror. All our problems and anxieties stem from this misdirection. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil came and lifted the veil. The meaning God is sufficient for me opened up. I saw and I felt and I tasted with the certainty of reality that, look at the progression, saw, felt, tasted. We think faith is just saying, I believe in God, and that's it. That's a superficial faith. We haven't even gone inside. I saw and I felt and I tasted with the certainty of reality that the pleasure and happiness of my own permanence exists in the exact same way and even more perfectly, in my faith and conviction that the everlasting, all beautiful one is my Lord and my God. The everlasting, all beautiful one. My Lord, Rab. Rab comes from the word for nurturing, raising. He doesn't just create us like a stone, He nurtures us, raises us to the level of humanity. My conviction that He is my Lord and my God, because through His permanence, an immortal reality is established for me. Think about the mirror analogy. There's a sun. I am a mirror. The sun reflects in the mirror, and the mirror shines. That's my life. I don't want that light to go out. But where did it come from? From the sun. And the sun is an eternal, uncreated being, so it will never fade. If the sun, which is eternal, continues to give me its light, then I too can be eternal. The moment I understand this, I realize I can be eternal. My essence becomes the shadow of an eternal and everlasting name. It becomes established through my faith vision that it will not die. So if I want my own permanence, I have to first see and understand God's permanence. And then, when I know that He will continue to grant me permanence, that deep-seated love of eternity will finally be satisfied. I will be at peace, free from all my anxieties and fears. But a person who doesn't see or know this can never be free. There are more meanings here, about 9 or 10 of them. We can read those next time. For the sake of God, Al-Fatiha.